Sometimes
mix,
those
like
when they don't
okay,
care.
take a husband and wife. A wife can nag a husband or vice versa. And he'll let her get away with things until
Yeah.
she'll finally say that final thing
One little
that just
thing.
went into them. And then he's like, it's not over. First he's, or she's going,
Yeah.
yep. And they ignore all that. They turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
But then it's that one little thing that can twist you.
Yeah.
Or a person in general. You can get away with so much stuff. You're like, fine. Then they keep nagging until they can find that little something that just dig into you.
Right. For the folks online that we've lost you, we're going to be in Genesis 34 tonight. We're
Yes.
beginning with a conversation on an eye versus an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And we're talking right now about the idea about, well, what does Jesus mean when he says, yeah, but from now on I say you turn the other cheek. The idea if somebody demands that you walk with them a mile, you walk with them 4. If they hand you they want your coat, you give them their shirt as well. All those kind of things. And so Bryce has taken this whole idea to the next level, even though they're still judges. We still believe in justice and those like that, but we really do believe heavily in mercy. Mostly because we're all under the judgment. We're all facing judgment. Either it's a judgment that sends us between heaven and hell, or a judgment as to how God is going to see us as Christians and how we've lived our lives. It's going to be important when we study this tonight because of the fact that we're going to see something. A very horrible thing. Actually, not multiple horrible things. And again, these are supposed to be the people that we're studying and looking towards as being examples of godly nature. And we're going to see something very, very different. So as we're talking about this tonight, just keep in mind on one side what the law would be. Mind you, this is still before the law. Leviticus hasn't been written yet. Deuteronomy, the law has not been written yet. We haven't seen Moses come down from Mount Sinai yet. So they're living under what law already exists in the land and what little Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have taught them. But then on the other side, be thinking about Jesus Christ and his teachings, specifically as it relates to this idea, if somebody harms you, what do you do? We're all going to be so grateful we're not under the law. All right? Okay? In fact, but when it comes to this thing, we're kind of wishing that these guys were under the law, and you'll see what I mean by that. So it's been 2 weeks. We had Passover Seder last Monday night. So it's been 2 weeks since we studied, and we were in the book of Genesis in chapter 33. We love that chapter, speaking of forgiveness. That's one of the best chapters in the book, in the Bible. All right, what happened in Genesis chapter 33?
Two brothers reconciled.
The 2 brothers reconcile. All right, did Esau demand an eye for an eye? No. He truly turned the other cheek. All right, refused all his brother's gifts. Offered his brother, I'll even guard you as you go to Shechem, where he's on his way back to see his father. So Esau becomes quite an archetype for us to understand and embrace this concept of forgiveness. And Jacob's sons just didn't learn the lesson. Because that's what we're going to see in chapter 34. All right? Any questions about the study a couple weeks ago? All right. So, all right. Let's begin in Genesis 34. Is everybody there?
Yeah.
All right. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and violated her. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me this girl as my wife." When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with his livestock. So Jacob kept quiet about it until they came home. Then Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk with Jacob. Now Jacob's sons had come in from the fields as soon as they had heard what had happened. They were filled with grief and fury because Shechem had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. But Hamor said to them, "My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Intermarry with us, give us your daughters, and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it. Then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like, and I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the girl as my wife. Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They, Jacob's sons, said to them, we can't do such a thing. We can't give you our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will give our consent to you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go. Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who was the most honored of all his father's household, lost no time in doing what they said, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to their fellow townsmen. These men are friendly toward us, they said. Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters, and they can marry ours. But the men will consent to live with us as one people, only on the condition that our males be circumcised, as they themselves are. Won't their livestock, their property, and all their animals become ours? So let us give our consent to them, and they will settle among us. All the men went out to the city gate, agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. How many days later?
3.
3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from the Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came up on the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city out in the fields. They carried off all their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me a stench to the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed. But Jacob's sons replied, should Shechem have treated our sister like a prostitute? Okay. Very bad. All right.
Outrageous in what they did.
Yes, what they did. It is outrageous.
I don't think any woman should go through that.
Right, okay, so let's not jump ahead, because I want to work our way up
What
there.
about the poor men?
Thank you very much. Okay, right, so,
Poor men, all of them, not just him and his
Because they were
father.
innocent, they had no part of it.
Yeah.
all right, so this
Yeah,
is where we
that's
go
what
into the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth thing, all right? Because they didn't get an eye for an eye, did they? They wish they had an eye for an eye. Okay, so I mean, in a story like this, you wish for the law. Because at least, especially even for Shechem, all right, what are you going to do to me? All right, what I did, to Dinah was wrong. Okay, but what is appropriate punishment for this? All right, but before we get to that, let's do some of this stuff. Weeks and weeks and weeks ago, for some reason, we were hearing all about Jacob and Rachel and the children they were having, and Leah and the children they were having, and the two concubines, or the two maidservants, and the children they were having. We were only mentioning boys' names, but the only girl we mentioned is Dinah. This is why. All right, this is why. Who is Dinah's mother?
Rachel. No, it ain't. It's the first one he married.
Leah?
It's Leah.
Leah.
It's Leah. Yeah, Leah. All right, and that's not going to be important considering who the brothers are. Okay, all right. So Dinah, the daughter of Leah, had been born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. Okay, this is not an unusual thing. Women do travel; they meet with other women. It's not uncommon. Now Shechem, by the way, the name of the city that they're in is Shechem. Okay, so he's named for the city. When Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of the area, saw her, he took her and violated her. All right, horrible, right? Horrible. Done, deal, there's no questions about this. But the story gets strange. He really does care about her. He just got a little carried away. All right. I don't know if this is not unusual this time.
Maybe that's just their rough way of how they live their
Again,
style.
this is not the 21st century by any means.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so
It was obviously wrong, but and I don't want to make light of this. Rape is horrible. Period. But it's not unusual. This has happened. Even
But
in our
those-
lifetimes.
In those days, that rape must have been really, really considered bad.
Well,
But
there's two parts
they
to
didn't
it.
consider
Compared
it
to
rape.
now.
It's the
No, that's what
Israelites
I mean.
considered it as a rapist. Right?
It's a rape. It's a violation. They
He
use strong
knew
words.
He was wrong.
Yes.
So why did he rush to want to marry her if he know he treated
Because
her
he
wrong?
That's where I'm at. Why did he want to marry
He
her?
was so anxious to get her.
That's the point. He was just anxious.
Well, read it.
Loved him.
Read it. He loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her.
Yeah.
I said, look.
Right. So this is strange. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just for the fun of it. All right. Again, I don't want to make light of rape. Wrong. Period. But we know about shotgun weddings, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is why there are shotgun weddings. All right. Most times, shotgun weddings are for children who have agreed to get involved with each other. All right. Not in the case of here. All right. Dinah has not agreed. Obviously, she resisted. Hence the reason why it's a violation. But Shechem does love her. So again, doesn't change the element of the rape,
No.
but it changes something else. He is sorry. Terribly sorry. Remember, his father's the king, for lack of a better term. He's the ruler of that area. So all the men answer to his father. And that's going to play a big role here real soon.
So he didn't control. He just didn't control his lust.
I think he didn't control his lust. Okay. And it's not like, okay, let's go back again to, rape is not about sex. And by the way, I'm sitting with a number of ladies sitting in front of me when I'm talking about this. Rape is not about sex. Do you know what rape is about?
Anger.
No.
Control.
Control. Power. Power. All right. Again, all the psychologists have pretty much agreed because they've interviewed and studied many rapists. It's overwhelmingly because they don't have control. And so one of the things they do is they take control of a woman. Okay, and that's what happens. Again, we're not there at this time. Who knows what's going on with here? But this story gets very strange because Shechem loves Dinah. All right. He turns to his father and uses a term that we've already used a couple of times. Get me this girl as my wife. All right. He's volunteering to make an honorable woman of her. Is that the inappropriate term that you may make an honorable woman of her? So he is seeking to do that. All right. He goes much further. Much, much further. We'll work our way through this.
Overboard.
Yeah, possibly even overboard. By the way, in your mind, compare this to Jacob and Esau. Okay? Because Jacob's done a horrible thing to Esau. Jacob goes out of his way to try to be able to offer gifts to his brother to get peace. And Esau is above all that. Right? He says, no, I'm just happy to have you back in my life, to be brothers again. Verse 5. When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with his livestock, so he kept quiet about it till they came home. All right. Yeah, something tells me Jacob knows what his sons are capable of doing. He knows that. All right. Keep that in the back of your mind when we start talking about Joseph. By the way, this is a very important chapter. We may even refer back to it when we get into Joseph. When we talk about Joseph being sold by his brothers into slavery, we might come back to this. And then you realize selling their brother into slavery was nothing to these guys, considering what they were willing to do. Then Shechem's father, Hamor, went out to talk with Jacob. This is the honorable thing to do. Now Jacob's sons had come in from the fields as soon as they had heard what had happened. they were filled with grief and fury because Shechem had done a disgraceful thing in Israel. Okay, that's kind of an unusual statement there. Remember, Jacob has already been told his name is now Israel. He's still being referred to by his family as Jacob. Later on, God will remind him his name is Israel. But this is in Israel. It means amongst Israel, amongst Jacob's people. All right, so we got to pause for a second, make sure everybody understands this. These are Canaanites, going back to where Isaac is. All right, and so this is close to Isaac, but they're not quite all the way back yet. So this is the area of Canaan, which is today Israel. So in this group of people who are set apart for God, remember they're circumcised, they're set apart for God. These folks, these Hivites, have defiled Israel. Okay? So whatever your family is, just think of it as somebody, a neighbor who is not like you, defiling your family. Yes, ma'am.
So they were worshipers of other gods?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, these are
And the Father
pagans.
allowed them to marry their...
No, good point. That's a great point. We're going to come to this.
Yeah.
All right? Again, remember the word deceitful. All right?
Earlier.
Yeah. But see, that's a great question. That's what we should be asking as we work through this. Because remember, this is how almost a lot of this mess got started.
Yeah.
Okay, Jacob and Esau. Remember, Rebecca doesn't want Esau marrying these Canaanites, these women.
That's right.
And so she sends Jacob back to her brother's house, okay, to make sure that he gets a woman from the circumcised amongst them, not from the pagans. Okay.
Deception is still around.
Oh, yeah.
In the Garden of Eden.
Oh, yeah,
All the
absolutely.
Israelis.
Sin is sin. That's all there is to it. Okay, and if we think we're above it, wrong answer. Okay. All right, so they were filled with grief and fury because Shechem had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter. I think that should not be done. Okay. Yeah. All right, guys. Right. Okay, just keep that in mind. They're being judgmental. All right. Verse 8, but Hamor said to them, my son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Intermarry with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it. Verse 11, then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like, and I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the girl as my wife. All right, now what do you think of Shechem? He's still a rapist.
I'll tell you, anybody done that, I wouldn't want to marry him.
Right. And that's because this is, we're yeah, but hold on a second. Let me give a point about James. We're very different type of people. Okay? We all grew up in the 20th century in a very, very comfortable, law-guided life. That's what you hear people talking about in politics. We're a nation of laws. All right? There are just things you just can't. This was a whole different world. These people were living day to day. All right? They were more barbarian than, if you can picture them as barbarians, they were much more barbaric. This was not a nation of laws. This is the birth, a very early part of Israel, the nation of Israel. This is why Moses comes down from the mountain with the law. All right, because again, if you really want to get, if you're having a hard time falling asleep at night, read Leviticus, read Deuteronomy, read Numbers. These are the books of the law. All right, they're tough books to read, but
go to sleep before you start.
Oh yeah, it's just real tough. But Jews have gone to great lengths. That's the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. They've gone to great lengths to study the Torah. And they have written commentaries on them that go on forever. So the rabbis could address this here right now in 100 different ways. Because they've been studying it for millennia. So the first thing they would probably take into consideration is, the context. These are barbarians. They're just a totally different world. It's okay to accept the way they approached relationships differently. They've made it clear this is wrong. What he's done is wrong. The really question for us as we study this, considering Jesus' teachings, if this young man comes to us and says this to us, what should we do? How's that for the $64,000 question?
I think I run away.
Only because you're smart. Seriously.
Forgive him.
He has to be forgiven,
Yeah.
right? There's no question.
folks.
Hey,
Hi,
hey,
Sherry.
she-
Hey, Kelly, how you doing?
Michael.
Good.
He has to be forgiven, but do you hold him accountable?
Yeah.
Right. So the idea is that you are forgiven, but you still have to be accountable. There's no prisons. He's not going to go to prison, okay? There's none of that, too. He's willing to give every single nickel he has
Yeah, I think that.
to be forgiven. Okay, so let's back up a chapter. Jacob was willing to give everything, not everything, but a lot of what he has to Esau to be forgiven. What does Esau do?
Good.
No, I'm doing this on purpose. I'm misleading you on purpose. What did he do?
Forgave him.
He forgave him. No, he forgave him. Esau forgives.
Separated.
Yeah, Esau forgives Jacob.
And they was afraid because his
I
brother
got a
was
sister
coming.
I don't talk to either.
Yeah, well, we're not. So do I. All right, not because I don't want to talk with her. She doesn't want to talk with me. I have a brother, the same thing. He doesn't want anything to do with me. Okay, and I know why.
Because I was the worst mother and a lousy sister. But what does she want today?
Yeah. See, now I tell you, there's a lot of that going on in my family too. All right. So,
Everybody has it.
but the idea is that what Christ is teaching us, and this is what drives my family members crazy. I love them and forgive them. You know, I will not speak ill of them. I won't. I absolutely will not speak ill of them because I'm praying and hoping for reconciliation. Yeah, and I don't care if it's when we're in our 70s and 80s. I don't care. I'm just praying and hoping for reconciliation. And I know there are terrible things happening in them, in their families. This is the power of Christ. This goes beyond anything we can imagine. Even in the time of Christ, we, by our standards today, would see them still as barbarians.
I was watching Barabbas this week.
Mm-hmm.
That was, it took you way back in them days. That's what I was thinking back there while I was doing the story. Now trying to put myself back there.
They're under the law. They're under Roman law.
Yeah.
Okay? But wait, mind you, Roman law overwhelmingly was a great thing.
Yeah, but
All right? Because it ensured fairness. I mean, we studied Acts. Right? Remember Paul, as soon as they're getting ready to punish him, they had him on the rack, ready to go. And what does he say? Do you always do this to a Roman citizen without a trial? The Roman soldiers go, oh my goodness.
they forgot he was.
We didn't know. Oh my God, we're so sorry. All right? Because that's what Roman law was. Now, by our standards today, that time was barbaric. I mean, the whole concept of a crucifixion. I was reading recently when the last guillotine execution was. I think it was like the 1920s.
Yeah, it wasn't that long.
It wasn't that long ago.
No.
Okay. Again, going back to the cardinal. Okay. He's advocating that any death penalty is barbaric. So just keep in mind, how they. Oh, I'll tell you right now, because again, as a member of the pro-life movement, this generation growing up consider abortion barbaric. They're seeing it more and more. They're going because we have ultrasound. In 1973, when Roe Wade was passed, the constitutional amendment, the Supreme Court decision making abortion legal, okay, they didn't have ultrasound. Now, shoot, boy. And then, in politics, you just heard Rand Paul, who's, announced that he's running for president. Of course, if you're a Republican, the media attacks you. And one of the things they want to know is where do you stand on abortion? He said, I'll tell you what, you go back and ask the Democrat side where they stand, then I'll answer your question. Jesus said the same thing. He did the same thing. Sure enough, they went to the Democrat leaders and they said, oh, no, I want that to be between a woman and her doctor. Rare ever does a woman go see a doctor before having an abortion. All right? And they said, wait a minute, a 7-pound baby inside a mother's womb, you'd want to advocate for an abortion? She said, I still think that should be between a woman and her doctor. So the answer is yes. You would allow that to happen. They still do partial birth abortions if they can get away with it. So that's barbaric. If this was the 60s, the 50s, we would consider that murder.
Yeah.
All right? So you get the impression. Everything in context. Christ is above all of this. It teaches us powerful things like forgiveness. So are we generally in agreement that these guys should have been at least given Shechem the benefit of the doubt and consider him to be forgiven? Now, there still can be a penalty. There
You're
can
saying
still,
whether Jacob should have turned the other cheek against him?
well, I wouldn't go so far as to turn the other cheek, because that means you don't do anything afterwards.
Yeah, that's
I think there should have been, okay, well, let's work this out. But there were no prisons. Remember, there's none of that kind of stuff going on here. Pretty much, like, in my humble opinion, and again, if there's a theologian out there who knows better, please let me know. Shechem is giving everything. He is literally giving everything as a way to pay his debt. You know.
Yeah, but he used a lot of people to do it.
Well, again, now we're going back to a different culture. All these men are under his father's authority,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
right? You can go much further.
And that's their sister, too.
Oh, now
No, I mean the poor men that got circumcised. They didn't have the right to say, no, you can't, I ain't gonna do it.
well, one of the things we're not doing.
The king's saying, you're gonna do it.
Yeah, one of the things we're not doing is nowhere in this story here does it go back to when we saw Rachel and Rebecca going to their husbands. They were asked,
Yeah.
will you go with them? So we
Yeah.
haven't heard that from Dinah yet.
No,
Okay, in fact,
that's-
she's in the custody of Shechem. Okay, so, but let's get to first things first. If Christ was here, what would Christ say to Shechem? You're forgiven. All right? Doesn't mean that he doesn't still hold him accountable for something. Doesn't mean that he impoverishes him, takes all these gifts from him, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Verse 13. Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully. Two wrongs make a right, right?
Yeah,
Two wrongs make a right?
yeah, that'd be great.
No, so they're being deceitful. They're planning something. They're purposely lying. All right. And again, again, as much as I can't stand Shechem, all right, I do appreciate the fact that he loves Dinah. I appreciate the fact that he's apologized, and he's willing to do whatever he can in his power to make it right.
Yeah.
Okay. And now Jacob's sons. Now, mind you, they're hanging around with Jacob. Jacob exists with God verbally. He actually hears God speaking to him. He's wrestled with God. I mean, this is Jacob. What is his son's? Why isn't there a connection?
Would Jacob be here while the sons are telling this guy this?
That's a good question. We have this is all real close. Verse 13. Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They, Jacob's sons, said to them, "We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. Well, we will give our consent to you in one condition only." Yes, sir.
Need help?
Need help?
Where's the house's emergency number? Somebody got to lock up.
Oh, the housing,
Oh, God.
I got it upstairs, I don't know.
Yeah, I go to the apartment too.
I don't know.
You have it on your phone?
I might.
I don't have it on my
Who
phone.
locked out, the kid again?
Huh?
That same boy again?
Yeah.
What's he do, forget that key every day?
Yeah, she look every day.
Oh, that's ridiculous now.
I told him, he gave it the right
Wrap it around
person.
his neck if he loses it like that.
You should
He
let
lost it
somebody
last night,
hold
they
it.
had to call, we had to call the housing.
Yeah, housing will start charging them for that. though.
Oh, they will.
Oh, yeah.
They have to.
I
It's their
heard
The
rule.
first time they forgive you, the second time from then on, it's
$25.
$35 pop.
That's every day he forgets it.
I can go
When he
upstairs.
starts paying for it, it won't be forgetting it.
Hopefully.
Now, who is it?
It's on our floor? Oh, on your floor?
No, on the third floor.
His father's in a nursing home. He's a tall, skinny boy, nice looking boy.
Oh, I know, the one that comes to breakfast for his
Yeah,
mom.
he checks
Who
over.
lives on my floor?
Brian's
I don't know.
emergency.
This kid, I seen him come to
Okay.
get breakfast.
Well, that's not for,
675-3502.
No, not Harry, no.
that's for the girl, for the lady, the fifth floor.
All right, so we're at the point right now where we're talking about,
Forgiving.
yes, dear, perfectly done. So that's not what happens. There's a deal made. There's a deal made, right? Now watch this. Okay, so Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father. We can't do such a thing because we can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will give our consent to you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. By the way, keep this in mind, those of us who studied the book of Acts and the issue Peter had when the Gentiles started coming to Christ, whether or not they should have all been circumcised. See, this thing went on for thousands of years. Then we will give our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. That's an absolute no-no. Absolute no-no. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go. They have no intentions on doing that. None whatsoever.
The big deception.
The big deception. Okay? But the other side isn't looking so rosy either. 18. Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who is the most honored of all his father's household, at Shechem, lost no time in doing what they said, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city. So I'm willing to bet you Shechem got circumcised right away. Okay. Now they go to the gates of the city. That's like going to the main square. All right. That's where the leaders hung out. All right. In the gates. And they spoke to their fellow townsmen. Verse 21. These men are friendly toward us, they said. Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours. But the men will consent to live with us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised as they themselves are. Verse 23, this is where it gets dark. Won't their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours? So let us give our consent to them, and they will settle among us. Okay, two things. One, circumcision was meant to separate Abraham's descendants from everybody else. It was a part of the covenant. It was a sign of the covenant. That's the reason why Jewish boys are circumcised. They're circumcised to remain as a separate people. All right? It's not enough. You don't make yourself right with God by getting circumcised. All right? Jesus would even teach on this, all right, about circumcision of the heart. The idea is to be set apart for God. That's what the word holy means. Holy means to be set apart for God. That's what this was supposed to be with circumcision. So now, not only are Jacob's sons being deceitful as far as their sister, they're being deceitful about God. They're using something that was meant for good, a sign for good that you were set apart for God, and using it to trick these men from Shechem, the Shechemites, into this.
Yeah, make them all weak.
And then another thing too, though, what do the Shechemites want?
All the livestock and the property.
Yeah, it's all going to be ours.
Yeah.
There may be a communal group, all right? You're familiar with communal groups, right? This is where the word communism comes from. Actually, Jesus teaches on this, even in the book of Acts teaches. Everything belonged to everybody.
But in the long run, isn't that still part of God's plan, even though they did it the treacherous way, the evil way? Because if they would have worked it out that way, those girls supposed to have what God promised Abraham, so many children, all born as the stars. I got it all.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Sands of the beach, stars in the sky.
So by slaughtering all those men who were Canaanites,
Right.
it still kept those women pure to marry.
Right.
the
But
right
this,
kind of men.
yeah. And again, God does take things that we do bad and turn them into good. But things that meant for evil, God uses for good. Yep, it does happen. But this is, again, showing us that, again, how confused Jacob's sons are about what God expects of them. Okay, again, remember, the law is coming.
That's true.
The law is coming, and there's a reason for all that. Okay. Verse 24. All the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. Okay. 3 days later, when all of them were still in pain from being circumcised, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, all right, Dinah's brothers, these are children of Leah. These are some of the oldest boys. All right, Reuben's the oldest. Okay, but
yeah.
Simeon and Levi are also some of the older boys. All right, so these are full-grown men with servants of their own. Okay, attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies, and instead of saying what a terrible thing this was, and going back and hold their brothers accountable, they loot the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city and out in the fields. They carried off all their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses. Unfortunately, Jacob is not strong enough to stand up against them. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me a stench to the Canaanites and Perizzites. The people living in this land, we are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But Simeon and Levi reply, "Should Shechem have treated our sister like a prostitute?" All right. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. They slaughtered them. There's no eye for an eye. You wish it would be eye for an eye. All right? Because that would have been just.
But only two of the brothers. What happened to the third brother?
What third brother?
Was there a third brother?
No, the three they're talking about there includes Dinah. They're the three children of Leah.
Okay.
Who's Dinah's mother?
Leah.
Leah's Dinah.
So it was only two brothers.
So
There's only
they're
two brothers.
Real, it was their real mothers.
Yes.
Brothers.
Yes, these are her full blood.
Stepbrothers.
These are not
Yeah.
stepbrothers.
Yeah, those are real.
It doesn't matter. The stepbrothers do what?
Those are the ones who.
Loot the city.
Yeah, they did everything wrong.
Okay.
And she must have been one of the younger ones, because before, when Leah was first getting pregnant, she was boasting about, "Oh, I have gotten a son."
Yeah.
And she said that through so many years. And
Yeah.
then finally she got a girl. So that little girl must have been the youngest of the bunch. So sure that she was pretty and,
Right,
you know.
right. A young woman worthy of being married.
Yeah.
So we have here is, again, so the thing is that you can see how bad these brothers really are. Now, again, that's in the context of our 21st century viewpoint. Okay? I'm willing to tell you that terrible things like this happened often. Okay? There were warring tribes wandering around. Look at what's going on in the Middle East right now. These exact same things are happening right now. There are 9-year-old girls being raped.
Yeah.
You know, and
Certainly is.
forced into marriage. All right,
Yes.
all right, to be able to build ISIS. All right, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, because they're building, the nation, so they can have an Islamic nation. So again, this is not too far from us right now.
That's right.
You know, and again.
So they're going backwards in time.
Oh, absolutely. Now we go back to the term barbaric and barbarism.
Yeah.
So that is what's happening in all of this, and it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So let's finish this, because it is, like I said, it's a bad chapter. We want to get to some good stuff. In the back of your minds, and I'll remind you each week, remember how bad these brothers are. All right, and unfortunately, how weak Jacob could be. Now, mind you, but these are 12 sons. Now, mind you, I don't think Joseph's involved with this. Benjamin hasn't been born, to my knowledge. All right, so there's 10 or less. And then when we get to that, but in the back of your mind, when we start talking about Joseph, because shoot, we're almost done. Joseph gets born. Starts coming. Oh, Joseph's dreams, chapter 37. We're just a couple of chapters away from it. And we're not really going to spend a lot of time in 36, because this gets back to Esau's descendants. So we won't go through all those names. So we're a couple of weeks away from getting to Joseph. 37, that's chapter 37. There are 50 chapters in Genesis. So that's 13 chapters that either directly or indirectly involve Joseph. How's that for being important? We're going to love Joseph, right?
Yes.
We're going to love Joseph. Again, another pre-type of Christ.
Next chapter, 37.
Yeah, that's when he has his dreams and stuff like that too. And again, if you want to have some fun, if you want to get caught up,
Got thrown in prison.
yes, yep. Obviously, it's Joseph and his coat of many colors. I'm sure there's something you can watch on TV. Whether it's Donny Osmond doing it on stage or some other element, but the story of Joseph is it's wonderful. He's a great figure for us to emulate because of his forgiveness. Isn't that such a powerful word? We keep hearing it over and over and over again. All right. Any questions regarding what happened at Shechem and going forward?
Does it say anywhere? I know it was Simeon and Levi.
Right,
That was really the troublemakers that started Let's Go Pillage.
yep.
Did all the brothers go with them?
We have no knowledge of who exactly went. And the only thing we know about the other brothers is what they say, that the other brothers, when they came upon the sons of Jacob, sons plural of Jacob, came upon the dead bodies and looted the city. So we don't know exactly who that was.
Yes, not giving them up,
No.
just the two.
In 35, Jacob gets back to Bethel. That's where he met God, and he had his dream about the ladder into heaven. We're going to see some deaths, all right? And like Ernest Hemingway said, that all true stories end in death.
Rachel and Isaac.
Yep, Rachel and Isaac die. Okay, and then we move on. We eventually we hear about Esau's descendants, and then we get into
That's when
Joseph's
Leah
dreams.
dies.
Say again.
That's when Leah dies.
Yep. Yep. Giving birth to Benjamin. And remember, she said that.
Oh, yeah.
She actually prophesied her own death.
They put her in a coffin and buried her.
Yep. Or in a tomb. They do a lot of
Well, they
tombs.
got the coffin here.
Yep. Anything else? All right, we'll see you guys later.